So I will just read the textbook, and I will focus on the textbook. Page 73, the transition to industrialism, rationalization. The title is, the subtitle is rationalization, but actually the author, the Philip Abrams, he devoted more than half of the pages to Weber's approaches, Weber's methodology. You should pay your attention to Weberian approaches. It's very unique in that sense. Most of the social scientists in 19th centuries, they focus on the social structure rather than social action. But Weber, nowadays in the US and in English-speaking world, they have much interest in the rational choice approaches. They assume that all the human beings are rational. In that sense, they can calculate, they are rational to select. So nothing is just determined behind your back. When you read Marx and Durkheim's works, their books and articles, it seems there is something behind you. That's the social structure and social forces that push you to do something, to think something, and to think something and to do something. So it's the social structure that pushes you, that makes history behind your back. Even before you come to realize, you select, you act yourself, some huge, just overwhelming kind of social structure just pushes you to do something. That's some underlying assumptions in Marxist and Durkheimian approaches. So, for example, I told you, I think you can remember that. Still, in Korea, some sociologists, they argue that if they can have some three variables, say, who is your parent, especially your father, or what's his job, and where do you live, and which university are you rolling in. If they have just three variables, some scholars, some sociologists even argue that they can explain, they can understand your preferences, your behavior, your choice, even before you move, you choose yourself. Let me repeat. Some sociologists, mostly inclined to structural analysis, structural causal explanations, they argue that even in Korean society now, and not Korean society in our 60s or 70s, now Korean society in 2012, if he or she had just three variables, that is your parent's job and your parent's residence and your job, which university are you in, they can predict your preferences. What kind of movie do you like? What kind of garments, what kind of clothing do you like? What kind of movie stars or what kind of places you want to travel? How could they do that? How could they predict your own behavior even before your own selection, your own move? How could they argue that they are so bold to predict your preferences? Let me repeat. In sociological tradition, you can just simply divide the two traditions. One is structure, social structure directed. The other one is social action directed. Marxist and Durkheimian approach is just focus on the social structure. From Marxist point of view, if you belong to one social class, they can predict your ideologies, your social behavior. From Durkheimian point of view, he can argue if you belong to so-called mechanical or organic solidarity, they can predict what kind of people are you. Your character, they can even predict, even before they have some conversation or observation about you. If some professor in your university come to you and let's have some game. If you tell me the three variables, three factors, what is your father? What is your parents' job? And second, where do you live? And you are a Nanjing University student. Which high school you graduate? If you tell him or her that three factors, three variables, I can predict your preferences. What kind of movie or what kind of girl or boy do you like, or what kind of places do you want to travel? If someone told you, just to challenge you just like that, what is your reaction? Do you believe in his or her stories? Or in some sense, that really makes sense? I'm telling you, Marxist and Durkheimian approaches, they put their emphasis on social structure. But unlike these two approaches, Max Weber, he put his emphasis on social action. And what is here in missing link? Weber, he really emphasized this. What is the missing link here? Don't you read that textbook? Cultural. Cultural content of action. That's from the culture side, it's meaning. That's some meaning. Meaning. During the Cold War era, the US and the English-speaking world, the so-called free world, they tried to confront Marx with Durkheim and Weber. And they tried to invent Weber, just like Marx. Marx put his emphasis on the capitalism and capitalist development. Weber is talking about the bureaucratization, rationalization of society. So, just like Marx, Weber too, from the English-speaking world, they try to invent Weber's images. He put his emphasis on the rationalization, bureaucratization of the world. The same level as the capitalist development. But when you have chances to read Weber's book, actually Weber's book is too tedious. It's when you try to read the Weber's book, it really is torture. It's when you read Durkheim's and Marx's book, it's very somewhat passionate and it's very interesting. It's somewhat, for example, the Communist Manifesto written by Marx and Engels. It's so beautiful. So the English literature class, they adopt that Communist Manifesto as one of the most well-written documents. So actually, it's very beautiful. There are many sentences and phrases still quoted. But when you try to read Max Weber's book and articles, it's so monotonous, and no interest at all. It's very hard to read page by pages. But when you come to understand Weber's methodology, it's very interesting. It's very funny, actually. So let's come to the textbook, page 73, the transition to industrialism, rationalization. A criticism often made of Marxist historical sociology is that it tends to sidestep the issue of why individuals choose to act in the ways they do, to ignore the problems of what their action means to them subjectively, and to overlook the ways in which meaning is rooted in culture. The meaning is rooted in culture, the subjective meaning. I still remember that moment when I joined a class in sociology of social movement, and I was attending auditing in Harvard University. The professor, I still remember his name, the Gregory Eckert from Poland. In the first class, he asked us, there are more than 15, almost 20 students in the class, social movement, social protest class. And he asked us why there was some social movement in society all around the globe and in the history. And including myself, students gave their answers. There are many kinds of answers why there are social movements do occur, are still occurring. In the last minute, he asked us, he give the lectures, the same classes for several semesters. Always one answer is just missing. Students just don't give that dimension. And he talk about that story. There are some problems out there, social problems. There are contradictions in social system. And the people got angry and they just poured out of the street and they protest themselves. But what all the students always they just forget is, why do they join the protest? Let me repeat. The students usually ignore. They observe, they know there are some protests out there. And they say something about why they are pouring out to the street. They got really angry about something. The corruption of the government, or there's some ignorance of our own sovereignty, or there's the government ignoring some risks, and so-called the medical disease or something like that. But the students always ignore why each and every individual come to join the protest. That means actually we ignore the subjective meaning. Why did they, each and every individual, try to join the protest, the social movement? That's analytically different question. You can observe as a social phenomena. There are some social protests out there. There are some rallies, there's some sit-ins or some gatherings out there. There's some shoutings, picketings. You can observe that as a social phenomena. So you think that's a social problem, political problem, economic problem, and people protest. You just take for granted the people, they got angry. But when you have chances to ask each and every one of them, why do you join this protest? Do you imagine, do you think, do they have the same kind of reason? Just one reason. I just hate incumbent president, or I just don't like this kind of system, or just like that. The fact is, each and every individual, they have different contexts, different meanings to join the protest. Individual has different meaning, different frame to join the protest. Although there are some structural causes, structural contradictions, social problems out there. It's not that social contradiction or problem automatically, cause social action, protest, social movement. There are some meaning, subjective meaning intervened. Meaning. It is this aspect, Weber, pay attention. Yeah, page 75, line 5 from above. From the line 2 from above. The meaning of social action is inferred from the structural settings not studied directly. Page 75, line 4 from above. And there is to that extent a vital sense in which the probable meaning of the cultural context of action remains a missing link in the chain of both Marxist and Durkheimian historical explanation. This missing link is in turn the distinctive concern of the historical sociology of Max Weber. Max Weber pay attention to this missing link, subjective meaning. Why do they join the protest? Why do they act just like that? People are not, programmed. People are not robots. People choose their own meaning, and they act differently, even in the same structural frames. Indeed, the second paragraph, it was the particular task of explaining action in terms of its meaning for the actor that was for Weber the justification for sociology as a distinct intellectual discipline. When I talk about this, the meaning for the actor, people think about it's just a retreat to psychology. But Weber's approach has nothing to do with psychology. It's purely sociological. He did not reduce social action or social meanings to psychological level. It's the social context, the culturally constituted meaning. As against the other socio-economic cultural sciences, the specific task of sociological analysis, unquote, in Weber's eyes was precisely, quote, this is the essence of Weber's approach. You should remember this sentence. The interpretation of action in its subjective meaning. The interpretation of action in its subjective meaning. The whole of Weber's work can be read as a massive attempt to establish sociology, in that sense, on an objective basis, to find the ground for an objective account of subjective world. Let me repeat. To find the ground for an objective account of subjective world. The meaning is not your own making. You share your meaning with other members of your society. Meaning is not private. It's public. And the goal, the ambition of Weber's sociology is very different from that of Marx and Durkheim. At the same time, Weber never seems to have believed, as Durkheim appears to have done, that sociology in his special sense of the discipline should or could supplant or even dominate the other social sciences. Rather, Weber urges the need, if adequate explanations are to be achieved, to add sociological analysis to other sorts of analysis. In particular, in relation to the study of historical problems, he nowhere suggests that the, quote, interpretation of action in terms of its subjective meaning, unquote, should be substituted for, say, the economic interpretation of history. So this is the most difficult part in understanding Weber's approaches. He don't want to substitute this structural or economic interpretation of his history with this subjective meaning, the interpretation of action in terms of its subjective meaning. Weber's approach is not either or. His approach is both and. That means this explanation has some meaning, is relevant, and the other side is relevant too. So if Weber comes alive in Korea now, there are some controversies, say about the Korean modernization. The role of President Park Chung-hee, Chung-hee Park. Some followers of Park Chung-hee, they argue that without the leadership of Park Chung-hee, Korea cannot modernize itself. They strongly believe in the strong leadership of Park Chung-hee. Without Park Chung-hee, there's no modernization project, modernization at all. And some critics on the other side, they criticize the modernization project was predetermined. It was imposed by the US, and if it had not been for Park Chung-hee, Korea could achieve modernization, even less cost. That means with democratization. Modernization with democracy, not modernization with dictatorship. So they totally, systematically ignore the role of Park Chung-hee, the leadership of Park Chung-hee. Without Park Chung-hee, we can do that. We could have done that. That's a structural explanation of Korean modernization. So if you hear that kind of extreme, argument, it's purely the role of Park Chung-hee that make possible the Korean modernization. And on the other hand, without Park Chung-hee, it has been better. We can do better. We could have done better. So the Park Chung-hee's contribution is nothing. But when you hear that kind of too extreme argument, you think, the truth is not in that extreme. It should be, in between. You guys just think of that. Structural explanations and some action-oriented explanations. You try to combine the structural determination and the individual, the leadership of that era. The truth could be, or should be, in between the two extremes. But you should understand why is there that kind of controversies going on in Korea. And some Western scholars, now I'm reading that Deng Xiaoping's biography written by Ezra Boger, the Harvard professor. He retired a couple of years ago. Some scholars in the Western world, they argue that without the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, China cannot open and reform and make progress in economic field. They argue that. But some scholars, even without the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, the Chinese people can do that. There are some controversies. But the historical fact is, Deng Xiaoping, he initiated that reform, the market-oriented economic reform, the late 1970s. That's historical fact. That's the event. we still have that kind of controversies. Why do we have that controversies still so far? Any ideas? Why do we still have that kind of controversies? The role of Park Chung-hee in the modernization of Korea, or the role of Deng Xiaoping in the market-oriented reform in China. Why do we have that kind of controversies? Actually, not only in academic world, but our everyday lives. We want to give explanations. What happened around our life world? Who initiated that progress, that transformation? Or without the initiative of some political leaders or academic leaders or economic leaders, could we do that? So that kind of things, that kind of questions, we usually raise that kind of questions. So not just in our academic world, sociology disciplines, whether it's a social structure or just individual social action, that really matters. I majored in sociology 3 decades. I read many of Marxist Durkheim's and Weber's books. You know, the big shots, that masters of sociological thought. When you read most of their books and articles, actually they said almost the same. The emphasis is somewhat different. So it's just a heuristic. Just try to understand the distinctiveness of Weber compared to Marx and Durkheim. Yeah, page 76. The line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, in Weber's own words, 1930. Just above the Weber's historical method, there is his comment. In Weber's own words, quote, "It is, of course, not my aim to substitute for a one-sided materialistic, unequally one-sided spiritualistic causal interpretation of culture and history. Each is equally possible, but each accomplishes equally little in the interest of historical truth." So all through his methodological writings, Weber emphasizes, he do emphasize this meaning, this subjective, the spiritual side of the explanation. That is that he don't want to replace the materialistic approaches with spiritualistic approaches. He tried to combine. But in his time, you know, the materialistic approach just prevails. In Korea, it's very interesting nowadays. In all my life, Korea nowadays, Korea in 2012, is the most materialistic era in Korean contemporary history. Materialistic. Just let me talk about you. You know, what kind of value do you cherish, except for having more money? Tell me, other values do you pursue in your life, except for having much more money, bigger houses? Tell me, anybody? I'm challenging you. Yeah. Happiness. What's the means to achieve the happiness without having more money? Happiness, that's a good goal in your life. I'm asking you, What's the means? How could you be happy? In order not to have stress, you should have money. Right? No? If you don't have money in your pocket, but you have no stress at all, could you think that's possible? I don't think you can do that. Yeah? Let me just remind you. I challenge you because Weber, he tried to give some balances between materialistic interpretation of history, interpretation of social action, with some spiritual, some value-oriented or some meaning-oriented social action. I'm challenging you. In all through my life, I think nowadays in Korea, Korean society is much more prevailed by the materialistic culture. That means money is everything. Just tell me, when I was in your age, just 3 decades ago, money is, I cannot say that's nothing, but money is just something, not everything. Without money, we can do many things. Without money, we can make friends. We can have some lovers. We can pursue our goals. We can have some happiness with someone. My family members, relatives, my friends, my loved ones. Well, let me ask you, nowadays, without money, what could you do? Could you be happy? Could you do something? Could you pursue your own life goals without money? Tell me. It's so funny. Nowadays, we are living. There are some, always in history, there are some miserables. There are some people who don't have money and job, and there are some very poor and very miserable people out there. I'm not just ignoring that social fact. I accept. I agree with them. There are some people out there. They lack the necessities of life. But I'm asking you, Korea, the 12th or 13th, the largest economic power in the world, we have so many things to do. There are lots of waste of food. It's just millions of dollars. We waste our food. So-called 5,000 years of Korean history, now and here, is the most prosperous in total sums, not individual. Each and every, there's some distribution so different. So if we ignore that there are social statuses, there are some economic differentials, that's for sure. But I'm telling, Korea, in economic terms, the most prosperous decade in Korean history, the so-called 5,000 years of history. But in my opinion, Korea now is the most materialistic. Do you agree with me? When I read Marx's book, Marx's articles, I think there is something missing. People do not, pursue the economic interests alone. There are other cultural values or other, political authorities we should follow. When I was in your age, that means 3 decades ago, I think there is something other than the economic interest, money. There are some other values we can pursue, we should pursue. Other goals than just accumulating money, investing money. See? I'm asking you, what do you think? What's your interpretation of your own situation now and here? Weber is talking about the materialistic interpretation of history and the spiritual interpretation of history. How could we interpret our own situation from spiritual terms? Can any of you can explain something about some comment? My parent generation is much more spiritual than my generation. My generation, much more spiritual than your generation. Do you agree with me? Or you just don't agree with me? Tell me. I'm, telling you, if you think you are much more materialistic, you should read Marxist books and articles, Marxist approaches. That's better. Materialistic interpretation of history is better compared to spiritual interpretation of history and society. Do you understand what I mean? Think over. Let me just read through this. Weber's historical method. Three things are important about the passage just quoted. The firm rejection of any sort of one-sided sociological knowledge. The emphasis Weber places on causal explanation as the object of historical sociology, and the words that I omitted. The missing words are, quote, if it does not serve as the preparation, but as the conclusion of our investigation, unquote. That concession to one-sidedness in the preparation of social inquiry commands attention, because a peculiar feature of Weber's sociology is his determined attempt to overcome the one-sidedness of knowledge by the use of a deliberately one-sided method of research. It takes time and energy to understand this. Let me tell you, if you are a son of a big businessman, one day your parent's company got bankrupt. There are some people poured into your own house and they take all your belongings, TV, your computer, and all your stuffs, because your father bankrupt. They had all that legal right to confiscate what you have. But as a son of your own father, you got really angry about that kind of rudeness, the ruthlessness of that invaders. You got really, just pissed off, in that kind of invasion. But as a social actor, as a human being, you can put your situation in some comparative and in some social, relations. They did that not because they tried to provoke you or they just humiliate you. It's according to the legal code, right? What I'm saying is, you have your own anger. You have your own grief. You can have your own reactions. That's for sure. That's subjective. But that kind of subjective feelings should be interpreted, put to the context of your parents' business. You just, enjoyed all the money and privilege supplied by your own father's business. Your father's business is going well. You just enjoy your life, all the luxuries in this world. But when your father just lost the game, all the fortunes and the luxury is gone. In some sense, your feelings are subjected to your objective situation, position in the social strata. It's very interesting. How could Weber overcome the one-sidedness of his own approaches, not turning his back on the subjective meaning but to the objective structure? He talked about, say here, I will repeat, a peculiar feature of Weber's sociology is his determined attempt to overcome the one-sidedness of knowledge by the use of deliberately one-sided method of research. That means Weber, he acknowledged, he recognized his approach is one-sided. He did not, argue. My approach is holistic, totalistic. I just watched the whole of the event, the structure. He did not say that. My approach is one-sided. So if you think, if you put your own experience as the son of big businessman, your own experience is just one side. You can overcome your own grief, and you can overcome your own grief, anger, by putting the one-sidedness of other people. You cannot be, in the same position. If you belong to the son of the wealthy people, wealthy family, you cannot at the same time belong to the poor family. You can belong to wealthy family to poor family, but you cannot at the same time belong to wealthy family and poor family. Do you understand? When Weber talk about the one-sidedness, the people's experience, their social position is conditioned. You cannot be at the same time two different social positions. I'm a professor. I cannot be at the same time student. I'm playing the role of lecturer here. In some other classes, when I attend, I learning the guitar or some piano, I could become a student. But that's different place, different time. I cannot be at the same time lecturer and student. In other places, I could change my role. That's for sure. But you cannot at the same time belong to the rich parents and poor parents. That's one-sidedness of our own social life. One-sidedness does not mean, you can have some subjective position. No, that's not. One-sidedness means your own social position. You cannot ignore, you cannot just deny, I belong to wealthy family. I just hold a very luxurious lifestyle. That's for sure, until your parents bankrupt. After bankruptcy, you should change your lifestyle. You cannot just lead the same lifestyle, luxurious lifestyle. That's the one-sidedness means.